Good evening and welcome to the March 26, 2019 meeting of Pequannock Township Council. Ms. Marsh.
In accordance with the requirements of New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was included in the annual meeting notice, which was filed in the office of the Township Clerk, posted on the bulletin board in the Municipal building, published as legal notice in the Suburban Trends newspaper, and distributed to all persons requesting notice in accordance with Township policy.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a prayer and a moment of thanks for individuals serving our nation. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Most gracious Providence, we ask that you bless this governing body with an abundance of wisdom and understanding, so that every deliberation will result in actions which will promote the common good and the general welfare for all the people of Pequannock Township. Amen.
Amen. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Florence Lynch?
Here.
Mr. Hurd?
Here.
Mr. Phelan?
Here.
Mrs. Russell?
Here.
Mayor Cole?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, next on the agenda is presentations, but we have Morris County freeholders here, Team Morris, so if you guys want to say something quick before we do our presentation.
Yeah, we weren't sure if you wanted to speak.
Freeholder Doug Gabbana, Tom Mastrolangelo, and Kathy DiFilippo. Did I say that right?
Mayor, council members, thank you, people of Pequannock, for this opportunity to say hello. I was just checking the list here to find out what roads we've done in Pequannock this year. Lincoln Park Road.
All right.
That's coming up. Now, we've already put the funding in place. Before we're adopting our budget tomorrow night, we put the funding in place for roads. We're already out on that. We want to get a jump start because we figured that if we can be out there early before these contractors get all their work lined up, we're going to get a better price. And we're also doing longer stretches of road, doing 2 to 4 mile stretches now to get more of a bang for our buck. So that will be the one project here. Disappointing, which you may know, is the Freedom from Religion versus the County of Morris lawsuit that went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's when after the New Jersey Supreme Court denied the use of public funds for historic preservation. Across the street was a very big recipient of a lot of our historic preservation funding, as well as all the other churches in Morris County. Now, we view this as a preservation of our history, not religion, even though religions are practicing churches. It's part of our history, and that's one of the oldest buildings in the county. But for now, until someone revisits it, there'll be no more funding for churches, unfortunately, and that's a big loss for us. But we're just happy to be here, and anybody has any questions of the freeholder board, we can answer them. Otherwise, we'll get you the answers. But thank you for this.
We're good, yeah. Thank you very much for being here.
And I would just like to say, I want to thank you for everything you do for the public. What we do as part-time government officials is spend a lot of time, effort to really try to accomplish good things for the citizens of townships and the county. And I want to thank the citizens of Pequannock and the citizens who are here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll just mention briefly, since I've been to 2 human services meetings today, Aquatic came up as just an example of another town that's on the outskirts of our county, not in Morristown, and the need for services such as the food pantry, and we talked about the opportunity. Interfaith Food Pantry has a mobile unit and can bring food and vegetables up here, and we talked about the need for this area, Butler, Pequannock, and then going in the other direction, but the outskirts of the county, and the need to bring services to the residents up here and not expect, and we realize transportation is a big issue for some people. And we talked particularly about our elderly population and their limits on food that they have available. So, yeah, Pequannock came up twice today in different meetings.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question, Doug? How long have you been a freeholder now?
Next week, I'll start my 22nd year.
Wow. Must be doing something. And Tom, how long have you been a freeholder?
I am in my third term, going into my 9th year.
Wow.
And my second term.
Right, we know. We helped you
years and
campaign,
8
yes.
years as a local. I was mayor, deputy mayor, and councilwoman in Roxbury for 8 years.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next
Thank
on
you.
next on the agenda is presentations, and we have a presentation on water quality by Dr. Raymond Ferrara. There you go.
Mayor, if I could just provide some context and generally introduce Dr. Ferrara to the crowd. As people in the audience may be aware, and anybody watching this may be aware, letters were posted on the township's website on March 20th and March 21st. The first letter was posted in response to the results of the lead and copper testing. To give some background on that, as a result of the township of Pequannock being a bulk water purchaser from the city of Newark, an additional requirement changing our testing protocol was implemented. Previously, our lead and copper testing was tested for every 3 years by soliciting samples from 30 random sites. That changed as a result of a plan that had to be drafted and submitted in 2019 to 60 sites every 6 months. And instead of being random sites, those 60 sites were from structures identified as Tier 1 and Tier 1, 2 structures. I'll let Dr. Ferrara opine more, provide more information on that. But the bottom line is the township received results that indicated an exceedance of 10% of the samples being tested had levels of lead and copper, or lead specifically, that was greater than 0.015 micrograms per liter or parts per billion. The township has 30 days to notify the individuals who participated in the testing of those results and 60 days to provide the system-wide notification. We are still awaiting approval. We actually just got approval from the NJDEP today to send the notices to the residents who participated in the sampling, and we have yet to get the approval to send the system-wide notices to the people that we're required to send them to. The Township Council, myself, the team associated with this, did not wait for those time periods to elapse. We had a discussion internally, and the decision by the team was, we found out about this on Thursday and Friday. Staff was on the phone on Monday notifying people, regardless of whether we had approval to do it in writing or not. And then subsequent to that, the open letters were posted on the township website. In addition to the issue with the lead and copper testing, as people may be aware, there was a notification that went out in January regarding trihalomethanes. March 5th was the follow-up test for the trihalomethanes and halocetic acids, and similar to what we experienced with the lead and copper testing, we got the results back and posted them within 24 hours. We're still awaiting the ability to send notification to residents because we have to get it authorized by NJDEP before we send it. But again, within 24 hours, we posted the results. This is where we are, and this is what's going on. As a component of these issues, again, the mayor, the council, the staff feel that the best thing to do is to address our water system to make sure we're getting the best water possible to our residents. As a result, collectively, we discussed it, and the decision was made to retain Dr. Ferrara to assist as a subject matter expert and guiding our water utility staff in making the best decisions possible and approaching it not from a knee-jerk or an emotional reaction way, but from a data-driven decision process manner to really do the best thing we can, because the priority is the quality of the water. Secondary is economics, but that doesn't mean we want to waste money either. So our goal is to try to address these issues in the best way possible and to move forward. I won't go into Dr. Ferrara's curriculum vitae, but it's 18 pages long. And I'll simply say that I believe your PhD was from MIT. So Dr. Ferrara is a subject matter expert who provides testimony in litigation that involves federal issues throughout the country, as well as locally in the state of New Jersey. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Ferrara, to provide your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Forgive my back, I'll try to turn around once in a while. What I did was, I'm new to the subject, obviously. I was contacted just last week about it, and I'm getting up to speed, and hopefully I'll be able to provide some valuable assistance to you as you go forward with this. But what I thought was useful, even for me, was to sort of put together a picture of what's going on here and provide some background so that we're all on the same playing field as we look at it. And that's what the slides I'm going to present to you are all about at this point. I may be boring some of you with some of the information I put up here, but just be patient with me if you will. But I thought it would first be useful to characterize where your drinking water comes from. And some of you may know that you have two primary sources of that drinking water. You have your own wells within the township. You actually have 3 wells, 2 of them operating now. One, I understand, is not in use at the present time. They're located up on the north side of the township, and they're down about 150 to 200 feet below ground level. So they provide a good quality source of water for you. You augment the supply from those wells via connection with the Newark water supply system. Your wells obviously provide groundwater. The Newark system is a surface water source. It comes from reservoirs in New Jersey, so it's a different type of water, so to speak, than your groundwater. It will have different characteristics. One statistic I have up there is in last year, 2018, it looks like about 40% of the total water you used came from the city of Newark system. So you're about 60-40 in terms of your wells versus the Newark system. In addition to those sources, you have a whole water distribution system with a series of pipes. You have a couple of booster stations. You've got storage tanks. You've got a blending facility. Pretty typical for a municipality of this size, and it seems to work quite well as far as I can tell at this point. Who's got the slide click?
Reads next.
Oh, great. Thank you. In terms of providing drinking water, potable water is a term we often use. It's safe for human consumption. Historically, the emphasis has been on the elimination of disease-causing organisms, pathogenic organisms. You might recall in the old days, everybody had cholera, etc., dysentery from drinking impure waters. We've gotten over that with disinfection. Disinfection is the primary tool that's used in making potable waters safe. The most common way to disinfect is to use chlorine, bleach, all right, to disinfect the water. And that's certainly an economical way to do it and a very, very effective way to disinfect water. The waters that you draw up from your wells, you do chlorinate to provide that disinfection. And the city of Newark also chlorinates its surface water that it provides to you. So it uses chlorination as well. So we have chlorination as the disinfectant in this system. What we've learned over the last 20, 30, maybe 40 years is that when you chlorinate waters, there sometimes is a byproduct to that process. There's still organic matter in these waters, particularly in surface waters. And when chlorine reacts with that organic matter, it produces a group of compounds called disinfection byproducts, DBPs. And you're going to see that more prevalent in surface water sources than groundwater sources, because surface waters tend to have more organic matter in them than groundwaters. And that might be obvious to you. Leaves are organic, they decay, they break up into little particles. You can't see them. They're very low concentrations. But there's some organic substances in the water, and the chlorine reacts with that. So typically you'll have more of these byproducts produced with surface water sources than with groundwater sources. The general disinfection byproducts that we're concerned about are shown in this next slide, and there are 2 primary groups. The first group is called trihalomethanes, THMs. And trihalomethanes, again, are the result of chlorine reacting with organic matter. And you produce substances like chloroform. You've all heard of chloroform. So there could be trace amounts of chloroform in waters where chlorination or chlorine has reacted with the organic matter. A second group of disinfection byproducts that's a little bit more recent in terms of regulation and so on are the haloacetic acids. And there are 5 primary types of those haloacetic acids, as you'll see up on the screen there. The whole thing about all of these byproducts is that if there's any chemists in the room, what happens is chlorine changes place with a hydrogen ion. And you substitute chlorine for hydrogen, and you produce these types of byproducts. The concern for them is that they do have some potential for long-term health impacts. You don't want to be drinking chlorine every day, chloroform every day, right? Now, that's an obvious conclusion. So there is a potential for long-term health impacts due to ingestion of these disinfection byproducts, but they have to be above a certain level for there to be any impact. As you might guess, you can walk by a car and breathe in its exhaust on any given day, and you won't have any ill effect. But if you did that every hour of every day for the next 30 years, it might be harmful to you. The same kind of thing would occur here. Small amounts of these won't be harmful to you at all. It's when they're at high levels over long periods of time that you have a potential adverse impact. Okay, next one. So to guard against that, EPA and the states have established standards for the levels of these contaminants in your drinking water. And they call them, these standards that they provide for each individual substance, they establish something called a maximum contaminant level, an MCL. And EPA and state of New Jersey has established MCLs for both the THMs, the trihalomethanes, and the haloacetic acids. For the trihalomethanes, it says that the concentration should not be more than 80 parts per billion, and for the haloacetic acids, it should not be more than 60 parts per billion. And you calculate compliance with that based upon an annual or 12-month average. So if you took a sample today, you'd go back and see how many samples you had in the previous 12 months, and you'd get the average over that 12-month period and see if it complies with those numbers, the 80 for THMs and the 60 for the HAAs. Now, here are some results that the reason why we're here today. Recently, you've done some sampling at 4 different locations. You can see them on the left. Beaverbrook Road location, Grow Right, Jersey Johnny's, and a Netherlands school. And in the second column, I have the levels of the THMs that were observed, and in the rightmost column, the levels of the haloacetic acids that were observed. You can see for the THMs, the numbers range between 70 and 86. The MCL is 80. So you've got 2 locations there at Beaverbrook Road and Grow Right, which are above the 80, and 2 locations which are below the 80. Now, those 2 that are above it are slightly above it. They're not 700, they're not 7,000 or anything like that. They're slightly above the level. So there's some exceedance of the MCL, and that's requiring you to take certain action. On the haloacetic acid, you see on the right-hand side, the numbers range between 52 and 63, roughly. And one of those values at Jersey John's was above the MCL of 60 for the haloacetic acids. So 3 out of those 8 test results exceeded the MCLs, which means you need to do something about it, okay? It's not an emergency, because I said the potential for effects are long-term. Only if there was ingestion long-term at these levels or higher, that there could be potential effect, but you need to do something about it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why aren't they consistent?
Why aren't they consistent? From one location to another? Well, first of all, there could be randomness just in the laboratory procedure itself. There's going to be some variability in the test results. You could have different reactions in the system, actually, that it can occur. You can have dissipation of things. You can have longer reaction times, which may result in greater THM production. So there are lots of things that can happen in these kind of things. There may, different times of day the samples could be taken. There might be different levels of well water at one location versus surface water as there is at a different location.
So you're saying this is all surface water created?
Not necessarily. I don't know that for sure. Okay. In general, you would expect that surface water sources, when chlorinated, will have higher THM levels than groundwater sources when chlorinated. But we don't have enough data at this point yet to discern how much is from each. But yeah, it's probably from the surface waters for the most part. We know that the city of Newark is planning to change some of their disinfection procedures to try to decrease the levels of THMs. So yeah, there's going to be variability, no matter what. So that's where it stands with respect to the THMs and the HAAs. You're a little bit above just recently. You've been a little above. You haven't been in previous years. So you need to take some action to make sure you get back into compliance on that. Now,
need to take an action, or does North Mate need to take action?
Well, you're serving water to your customers, so you have responsibility to serve water that complies with the criteria to your customers.
But if we're buying the water from somebody, aren't they also responsible?
They're certainly responsible for providing you water that's safe and is in compliance as well, yeah. So, water is not just H2O, okay, hydrogen and oxygen. There are lots of things in water, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because we talked, or Adam had talked about lead earlier. So there are many things in the water that you drink. In fact, some of those things make it taste good. You know, the calcium that's in there, the magnesium, some of the sulfur in there sometimes makes it taste good. If you ever bought a bottle of Perrier or some bottled waters, you can read on the label what the dissolved solids concentration is on those. In fact, that violates drinking water criteria, believe it or not, because it's above 500. So, but these things are not necessarily bad. It's just if you're consuming them the wrong way at the wrong times and so on. But there are lots of things in your drinking water, okay? And because of that, EPA has established MCLs, not just for THMs and HAAs, but for a whole slew of constituents in your drinking water. So there are MCLs for many, many different constituents in your drinking water. Just recently, as Adam pointed out, you had done some intensive testing for lead and copper, and you found lead and copper there, of course. You'd expect to find both of them there. But on the lead side, their levels were slightly elevated above the action level. Take the next slide. So where does the lead come from in your drinking water? Well, lead can come from different places. It can be naturally occurring, which usually is not the case in drinking water supplies, but it could be naturally occurring. But more likely, it dissolves into the water from the plumbing throughout the system. Water mains, that's generally unlikely because they don't contain lead pipes and so on generally. But many service lines, particularly in older areas, older cities, the service lines from the water mains to the houses or to the buildings were built with lead pipes in the old days. So lead could be coming out of those pipes into the water in those situations. Fixtures, the faucets on your sinks might have lead in them, and they may leach out lead. There was a period of time when the solder that was used to join pipes included lead. It was lead-based solder, and that lead is known to leach out of the solder into the drinking water. So there are possibilities for lead to be coming into the system. EPA has not strictly established what we call an MCL, maximum contaminant level for lead, but they have established something called an action level. And the action level is that you should not have more than 10% of your samples exceed a concentration of 15 parts per billion. If you do, you've got to go into action. You've got to take some actions, and there's a whole schedule of different things that can happen. But if you have more than 10% of your samples above 15 parts per billion, you need to take some action. So here's what happened with the sampling that you conducted recently in February, almost all of them in February. I think there was 1 or 2 of them in March. There were 60 samples taken. At 9 locations were the samples exceeding 15 parts per billion. So that's 15% of the samples exceeded 15 parts per billion. So again, you're a little bit above what the criteria would be in terms of exceeding the action level and requiring some action. The range of those 9 locations that exceeded, there were 8 of them at 19 to 32 parts per billion. And then there was one outlier there at 69 parts per billion, and I think I learned tonight what the reason for that is. It's an anomaly, I think, and it's not representative of the system.
Could you share that reason with us?
Can I?
Sure.
Okay. I understand.
You said it.
Yeah. I understand that sample was taken from a tap that had not been used in a year. So the water had been sitting there for a year, which violates all the protocols that you would expect, and it's not a representative sample of what a person would be experiencing from a typical sink.
So why would we take a sample that has...
The residents, I understand, took the samples themselves. Is that right? Do I have that right?
Yes, the protocol from the state of New Jersey was to send sample kits to residents of the specific criteria and with instructions to take the samples.
Right. So, and they were given some instructions, and I don't think the instructions would have said, take it from a tap that hasn't been used in a year and just been sitting there. So I think that number is an anomaly, okay? And that might have been lower, in which case you would have 8 out of 60, which would have put your percentage down. Still would have been above 10%, but would have brought it down below 15%. Anyhow, so you have some testing on the well water, the water that's coming out of the wells, and the water that's coming from Newark, and the lead levels there are very low. So we know the source waters are not the reason for the lead levels that have been observed in these 9 samples. By the way, the other 51 samples, many of them were very, very low, like 2 parts per billion or thereabouts. So it was just this small subset that had the higher levels. So we know that the source waters are not the reason for the lead. Therefore, the problem must be at the local taps. So it's either lead solder or it's the fixtures that are leaching lead into the water.
Question. Out of the 9 that are higher, are they in a specific area or are they evenly distributed around the town?
It's a real good question, and I took a quick look at that, and I found that about, I think it was 6 or 7 of them were in one general area of the township, and then a couple was spread out, and there was more toward the north. A couple were spread out toward the south. So we need to look at that a little bit further and see if maybe the materials that were used in the construction of those homes, when they were constructed, etc.
That was going to be a follow-up question. Any idea of the age of the houses?
Who picked the houses?
Well, in any age, like older homes are going to show more of an issue than newer homes.
I have a question on that. The 60 homes, though, weren't they all from the same time period that houses were built?
Correct. And Mr. Struble, the licensed operator, is in the audience. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Struble, but we had to put together a testing protocol and submit it to the NJDEP, and they specifically wanted homes that were built from 1982 to 1988. So the idea was they were targeting homes that had a specific construction technique that for some reason they believed would lead to the potential for higher presence of lead, which was why we were testing those homes.
They would have copper pipes with lead.
Lead solder.
Lead solder, correct.
The solder compound changed in 1988?
It was outlawed, if I remember correctly, yeah.
Okay.
So we have houses that were constructed using lead possibly as solder. Now we have to let the whole town know that we have lead in our water. Doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, it's not making sense to me. I'm sorry, I just lost it here.
We all have lead in our water.
No, but I don't have that much lead in my water.
Right. Most likely correct.
Right. Only a few of the taps showed lead. And again, these were taken by the residents, so we may want to do something a little bit more sophisticated next time.
Well, I was going to say,
we should do a little bit more sophisticated sampling of water that's coming to houses, not going into the houses.
Is there a capability of doing that?
We are going to sample a couple of hydrants.
Yeah, that would be...
We are going to a couple of locations. We're going to test the hydrants before they...
Right, because to me that makes more sense.
But it still doesn't...
It doesn't get you off the hook.
No, I understand that, but...
Ultimately, it's what the residents drink that has to be safe.
I understand that too, but it sounds like, and maybe I'm a layman and I don't understand, but it sounds like they have a piping problem from our connection to their house, which is not our responsibility. Is that correct?
Well, we have to.
No.
Well, that's not exactly.
That's not correct. We're responsible.
Well, we're responsible. The people drink the water, so we're responsible.
But now, can I ask you, you're saying that there hasn't been any samples from homes and houses that were built in the 50s or 60s? It was
Not this round, no. Back
If I could interrupt, Mark, can you just come up and grab a microphone so this is recorded as a component of the proceedings?
We're sorry.
There you go, Mark.
And in the interim, I just want to also clarify the point that based upon Mark's representation to me in the past and my understanding of the system, the township doesn't have lead services from the street to the homes.
Right. We did a materials evaluation. When we changed the meters, it was a big meter change program in the early 2000s, and that was one of the things I had the guys look at, what's coming into the residences, the businesses, and we all found copper. So as far as I'm concerned, we don't have lead service lines, and that's, like the city of Newark, a lot of problems because they have a lot of, it's an old system. Older. They have a lot of lead service lines. That is not the case here.
Okay.
But specifically, I did actually go to a conference on lead and copper last week, and I talked to a couple DEP people. Houses built between 82 and 88 are more vulnerable to the lead. Yeah, well, they're newer. They're, at 88 they were banned. So it is possible, and I talked to Dr. Ferrara, houses that were built in the 50s or 60s that could have already kind of leached out. So that's why they didn't want us to test.
So there is a sweet spot, technically.
Right. So the state told me, no, you have to find as many sites as you can that were built between 1982 and 1988.
Well, you did a good job at it.
I did. Worked very hard on that plan.
So will there
Our
be
plan was
another round of
accepted.
testing?
Every 6 months?
Every 6 months you have to.
Different people?
No.
Same people.
Same people.
So what
So the
has
same
to be
people.
done to resolve this problem?
Well, we're going to do some more testing, around, so just see if we can get it,
Pinpoint.
possible. We talked about it. There is corrosion control.
Yeah, the point is, if the water you're serving is corrosive, and then it is the reason why the lead is leaching out of the solder or the fixtures, then you have responsibility to make it less corrosive.
Right.
So you can add corrosion inhibitors to the water, and that may cure the problem.
But as we know right now, the water that is coming out of the wells and/or we're getting from Newark is low in lead.
Yes.
We can presume that our infrastructure is low in lead because we have so many other point sources that we're getting water out that is fine. So it's just this area, and the question is it the house that's leaching it or something else?
Well, that's why we're going to do some further testing on hydrants, but in the general
Still
picture,
not close enough, though.
Yeah, it's
it has
still
to be
And
shut off.
Just if I can ask one more question, Councilman. And Mr. Struble, have we ever had a test that would indicate that our water is corrosive?
I was going there.
Darn it. And it was neutral.
So the water was neutral. Thank you.
But we do have to do
that on the
more.
record.
Part of that is pH in the water?
No, we're not drinking corrosive water.
And is that expressed as pH in the
But
water?
there's measurements, pH, acidity, alkalinity, and there's something called a Langmuir index that's used. I didn't look carefully at the numbers yet.
I was going to say that, yeah.
This index gives you some indicator as to whether the water could be corrosive.
Right.
And thus far, we've seen results that are consistent with neutral water.
Yes.
Thank you.
So if we take the corrosive out, and it's still not going to solve the problem.
Well,
This happens in some situations where they found that it's the lead service lines. They added the corrosion inhibitor. It did not cure the problem. The reason is because all the lead pipes. You have to go in, like Flint.
You have to change out the pipes.
Change out the pipes.
Suez is doing it now. I don't know if you've seen it in the paper.
So the next steps would be testing the closest hydrants.
Yeah.
And if they come out clean, do we get closer to the house? No, is that the shutoff valve so we can prove going in? Our service delivery is clean and it's got to be from there to the tap.
Well, we know anything that, all of the houses that failed, right, are between 82 and 88. We know we're using copper. I actually was on, I think, every one of them. Put the service in, so I'll need to dig it up. Been here a long time.
A couple of years.
So I was working in the water too. So.
And just through, and Mr. Struble can clarify this, but I understand that when we were doing the random sampling, there was one house that tested an exceedance for the presence of lead, and that individual happened to be a municipal employee and was instructed to change the faucet, and that corrected the issue.
Yes, because they had just recently had done some work I don't know if it was a plumber or who did the work.
And this was some time ago. This wasn't a component of this recent testing. This was 5 or 6 years ago. But that's just, I mean, because the big question everybody's going to wonder is, all right, so what do we do now?
Right.
You know, so obviously we have Dr. Ferrara is going to be guiding the team in kind of testing and pinpointing what we need to do with respect to our system. But from a resident's perspective, if I'm sitting here in the audience and I'm going, all right, well, how do I know? And obviously, the notice on the website provides information on labs. You can have your water tested. I understand it's anywhere from $150 to $50 somewhere in there. But also, you know, a plumber could be hired to look at your system, or you could ask a plumber to come in and identify if there are solder with lead in it, and maybe provide some remedial action for you within your own home. You have the ability to do that now as a homeowner. You don't have to wait for testing.
But if I was one of the homeowners tonight, for me to go and drink some water, is there something simple I can do, like let it run for 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Letting it run helps, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, the recommendation in the letter says allow it to run cold, use your cold water, allow it to run cold, and then wait an additional 30 seconds.
Right.
Okay.
And the point is, again, put a bullet up there, lead, like the THMs, there's not this bright line at 15 where you're suddenly going to have catastrophic health effects. You know, it's a more gradual and it's a long-term type of thing. Children tend to be particularly sensitive to lead. You've probably read about that. And so if you have young children, then you might prefer to take bottled water until you figure it out, that kind of thing. But again, it's not even for children. It's not a bright line where suddenly there's going to be a devastating health effect because you've got 16 or even 20 parts per billion of
But
lead.
there is a solution. So worst case scenario, bottled water, but you can still be taking showers, even if you wish to let it.
This is all about
30
ingestion.
seconds or a minute.
Ingestion inside your body, not on the outside of your body.
Okay.
And a solution could be that you add a corrosion inhibitor to the water.
Like an orthophosphate.
It's delivered to the entire system, the entire township, but it cures those that have had higher lead levels.
So let me ask Mark a question. Will other towns suddenly find this problem?
Yes.
Because the DEP is asking other towns to test for the same thing?
Yes.
So,
and a certain protocol.
So we're a step
we
ahead.
are in the beginning of it. They went for large systems first.
Right.
And then they're going for, we're a bulk purchaser from Newark.
Right.
So we were on the list to get our plan in, and you're going to see this more and more. I think there's 300 and some municipalities still have to hand their plan in.
Right, so we're kind of a step ahead of everything.
Yes.
We're approaching it.
We jumped right on.
Right.
Yeah.
We did. So, but you are going to see this more and more, and there are going to be more towns because they're going to have to sample at different locations. The DEP said,
Okay, but
you're going to see this.
We're doing the right things and reacting
Yes, we are.
accordingly and doing what has to be done.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
That's
Why is it the same 60 locations?
Well, I think I about have 123 on my list, but they want 30 standard, and then I needed 60 alternative sites. I have other sites, if someone, for whatever reason, won't participate anymore, there's another site. I think we have 123 houses that fall within the category.
Wouldn't they want a bigger testing pool? No.
You submitted a plan, right?
Yes,
That
and it was approved.
Reviewed and approved by the department.
Okay.
The DEP.
So we won't even be curious to know about houses that were built.
You can if you want to spend the money.
Yeah.
And how many houses do we service in Pequannock?
I think all told, between businesses and houses, we're a little over 4,000, 4,200.
So this is 9 out of 60 samples, which is a theoretical sample of 4,000.
But they zeroed in on a certain...
Right.
Yeah,
the highest risk.
But they did certain, it's not representative of all, but they wanted sites that were vulnerable and
worst possible.
It's worst possible
It's
sites.
exactly.
Exactly. If we had lead service lines, that would have been where we would have been tested.
So you're saying we have about 122 houses that were built within that time frame?
It's somewhere in that time period. So we have
Were
plenty
they all
of...
notified also? Even the ones that didn't get tested, that, hey, you are in this you are in this frame, you should probably take a test.
As of today, the only people who have been notified are those individuals who exceeded the 0.015. We haven't even notified the full 60 yet. We just got approval today to officially send a notification to those who participated, which is required within 30 days.
Mark, when was my house built?
I can look for you.
Are you sampled?
I'll see. I think you've been around a little while, right? Rock Ledge over there. It was in the 70s?
I think that was
The Rock Ledge,
The 70s.
Rock Ledge was there.
But to that point, if anybody has questions or anybody has concerns about it, my contact information is on the letter, Mark's contact information is on the notice, Mr. Coriel, the township's health officer's contact information is on the notice. We were receptive to calls, we're responsive to anyone who asks us. And to underscore one of the points that was previously made, and not that there's a positive element of this, but Mr. Struble and the team had until June to get this in place, which would then have had the time period be September for notifications. So in terms of us being at the forefront of the curve, we weren't waiting. And if anyone wasn't aware, Mr. Struble has announced he's soon going to be retiring, and he wanted to get this done.
Oh, no.
Can we reject that retirement request?
He's not going anywhere. We know where he lives.
I'm not leaving town. About 40 years.
You have at least another 40 years.
So I'm sure if the DEP wanted to expand it, they would expand it. So they're happy with if there's 122 houses that were built between that time frame, they wanted 60, they were happy with the 60 that we picked, so.
Okay. And that's one of the challenges, as Mr. Struble, in putting the plan together and having to go through various iterations before receiving final approval, is we're really beholden to what the DEP wants us to do. It's not something we're independently coming up with. We're following their protocol because they're the regulators. It's like the laws. We don't write the laws, we follow them. We don't write the regulations, we follow them.
I think there's been 150 plans sent in, and Christine Hansen from the DEP told me 99% of the plans that have been sent in have been sent back. They no good.
So the plan,
your plan.
The plan had to be done by June of this year.
Well, they told me that they wanted our plan done now because we're a bulk purchaser.
Okay, but we had until June.
Well, to do the testing.
To do the test. Okay, so it wasn't. Okay, so
the first time I sent the plan in was December 19th, and we got no, because I put in a lot of the testing sites that we used to use, and they're like, no. You're gonna use different testing.
Okay.
So it's the DEP. It's what they want done. So that's what we do.
I think that's the end of
That's the end of your slides.
official presentation.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. Dr. Ferrara, thank you. Mark, thank you.
Yes.
Hopefully, in the very near future, we can get this resolved. You want to take questions from the public?
It's up to your call.
Can I ask the question?
You just have to come to the microphone.
Come on, Rocco, you know the routine.
Just a small question here. I have to give my name and nobody knows me. Rocco Salucci, okay?
Does filtering help? Filters. Like the incoming filter when the water comes in, or you have a main
like a
filter.
Brita filter or something. Likely not for this.
No, okay.
Those will only help if it's particulates in the
I see. No, but even if you have
if you have a carbon filter, an activated carbon
It's a
filter,
triple filter.
it could provide some absorption. It would help THMs more so than it would for lead.
And by the way, I'm one of those that they use to do testing.
One of the good ones.
One of the 60?
No pay. No pay.
Ma'am, did I see that you had a question? Or Bob? Okay. We're going to take a few questions. We're going to
In relation to
My concern is...
Name?
I'm sorry,
address.
Bob Morley, 4 Jacksonville Road. I brought this up in relation to the THMs, and now I'm going to bring it up in relation to the lead. What is this? When I asked about this at the school board meeting, they said they had filters in place and yada, yada, yada. I don't know any filters that do that, but what are the chances this is actually getting into the schools? Because that's my real concern. My son drinks a lot of water. I don't want to drink a lot of leaded water.
Right. Wasn't one at school?
No, that was a private, it wasn't a public school.
Okay. If the schools were not built in that critical time period,
I have no idea what the schools are.
they'll get results like they did the other 51. because they would not have the lead solder concern. And I'm guessing they don't have lead service lines into the school, maybe you can verify that. So I would guess that they are not an issue.
Or I'm not real comfortable with guessing. Is there a way we can actually know this?
You can ask the Board of Ed to do the testing. I mean, we have no control over the Board of Education.
I'm not positive, but I believe schools have to do their own testing. I believe they have required to. I think they were required to test. We can verify that.
Okay.
want to verify that?
All right.
I think the schools were probably all tested.
That's much more concerning than the house. Okay.
Hi, good evening. Rhonda Lipson. I live at the Glens, and I'd like to know how they'll be taken into consideration in regard to the chemicals or the lead, and what will be done for them over in the Glens.
I believe the Glens was built in the 90s.
It was.
So they're
Okay,
not.
so we're saying the lead is not in there. What about the chemicals for the TTHM, whatever?
The same thing that we're doing for the other residents. We're trying to resolve the problem.
Okay, so obviously...
You're drinking the same water there that...
I'm not drinking any of it.
Well-
I don't even cook with it.
Okay.
So now, in addition, they said the other night that we're going to have to pay a higher cost in our water bill.
That's correct.
What is this for?
That's the
If
brand-
our water is not clean, why are we paying more?
That's the brand-new water tower that's on the top of Mountain Ave and the $1.5 million water line that we put in. Put $6.5 million.
Very happy that you placed it in, but we're still having water problems. So how is this going to be rectified then?
We're doing everything we can to rectify it, and NORC is doing everything they can, and I believe April 1st, the DEP gave them a new treatment that they can use to treat their water?
Yes, my understanding they're putting in a different method. They're going to switch chemicals to reduce their chlorination and pre-treat with permanganate, which would remove organic matter, which would reduce the potential for the creation of THMs.
Okay, so just a little bit further. So you said young children are a concern. What about individuals with like...
The lead...
That's for the lead.
With lead is young children.
Okay, and autoimmune disease individuals?
I'm not a health expert. I don't know about...
Because when I go into the health office, they just tell me run water, and there's individuals that are a little bit beyond. So what
Telling you to run
happens
the
for
water
them?
for the lead.
For the lead.
Right.
And then how do I shower with the TTHM and all of this type of thing?
Mayor and Council, if I may, the way I've been answering questions when I've had something that I posed to me is we don't know what unique characteristics any individual may have. So
Right.
if there's anything that someone thinks could cause them to be at a higher risk,
Right.
our recommendation is to speak to your physician about it because that person knows who you are.
Right.
I can't make a determination, nor can the council or Dr. Ferrara, if the TTHMs at the site you were at is this and you have that, you're at a greater risk. That's something that's unique to every
Well,
human.
Maslow's theory of hierarchy
Yes.
is that we all have basic needs to be met, and that's food and water. These are your basics.
Correct. As a town manager, I luckily have achieved self-actualization.
I'm being asked to be paid more, but my basic needs are not being met.
Unfortunately, the two matters are not necessarily connected.
Right.
But we have to operate a utility. So with respect to the revenues, I dislike raising anything, but unfortunately, the revenues have to meet the expenses to operate the system. And based upon the stagnant rates for 7 years and the fixed rate being stagnant for over 20, and the $6.5 million invested in improving the system, we have to raise the necessary revenues to operate.
Yeah, I understand revenues and budgets and plans and so forth, but I'm also asking for basics and safety.
Certainly.
And so I do hope that we will do some kind of expediting so that we can have this in order for people's well-being as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe? Do you want to take as many questions as there is for this? Because
Joe Wells, 5 Washington Street, Pompton Plains. Just a question on, we had some discussion on filtering and so forth. I'm just wondering if we could develop some suggestions for the people in town about how to do things in their home to filter their water. What would be the recommendations based on where we get our supply because of the mixing of our own water, the water that we have in town. Many residents over the years, when we used our own water, got water softeners because of the high calcium content in the water and so forth. But I think it would be good for the town, in addition to resolving this urgent or semi-urgent problem, to offer some suggestions about how to handle the water in their own home. A recommendation, not a requirement, but a recommendation from the town.
Thanks, John. I think in response to the comment from Mr. Wells, as I mentioned earlier, one of the challenges, it's a personal choice and it's a personal issue. I drink the water all day. So I've made the decision that based upon the data that I have, personally, that's my choice. Individually, you have your own choice. So there are certain filters, as Dr. Ferrara pointed out, that could reduce the presence of TTHMs. To put this in a context, based upon the action levels that the township has experienced, there's a 12-month period or 1 year that the DEP allows for it to be addressed. So it's not a situation where there are organics or some other problematic component in the water system where there's a boil water advisory or things like this. It's a level that requires notification and there's a period to correct it. So in response to that, the challenge is, I'm not going to recommend someone install a whole house water filter for thousands upon thousands of dollars unless they feel like they need that. I consume the township of Pequannock water. I'm not a resident of the township of Pequannock, but I consume it, and I don't have a filter on the township's municipal buildings water source. So it really comes down to what people are comfortable with. Individually, they should seek guidance from their physicians. If there are specific questions, like I said, Mr. Coriel, Mr. Struble, myself are happy to discuss the issue with people.
Any other questions before we let Dr. Ferrara and some of our experts from town go?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ferrara.
Thank you, everyone. Mark, Dave, Pete, and Dr. Ferrara for being here. At this time, next on the agenda, are there any reports from volunteers serving our community? Reports from volunteers? No? The next item on the agenda is public comment. The public comment period is listed for a total of 30 minutes. An additional public comment is reserved for later in the meeting. Individuals are requested to limit their questions or comments to 3 minutes. If anyone wishes to address the council, please wait to be recognized, come to the microphone, and provide your name and address for the record. Anyone? All right. We'll go to the next item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is a presentation of the proposed 2019 municipal budget. Mr. Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening, the Township Council has scheduled the potential introduction of the 2019 municipal budget. Prepared a brief PowerPoint presentation summarizing the highlights of that, and I will run through the slides. What's that?
It's a highlight reel?
It's a highlight reel. Lots of PowerPoint this evening. The first thing to point out is the budget process. For anyone who's not familiar with the municipal budget process, it actually initiates in September each year for the succeeding year. For anyone that's prepared a budget in the private sector or for other organizations, we have this unusual process where we operate on a temporary budget for a portion of the year when the budget is ultimately adopted, and then it becomes in essence retroactive. So instead of planning for a budget in October that's effective January 1st, we start in September, work through it, usually adopt a budget sometime in March or April or May, and that becomes the budget for that calendar year. But the statutory process required within the Township of Pequannock, because we are a Faulkner Act community, includes input from department heads, board committee, commission chairs. They have to prepare their documents, make submissions to my office. Chief Financial Officer and I hold a public meeting that's noticed in November to review those budgets with people. The council receives the initial distribution of appropriations in January, and the process then moves forward with potential introduction this evening, a public hearing, provided it's introduced tonight on April 23rd, and potential adoption on May 14th. The bottom line, which is where it's best to start with budgets and work backwards, the 2019 municipal budget, as prepared, includes total general appropriations of $18,745,171. The total general appropriations are actually $575,000 or $659, or 2.4% less than the prior year. Why? How's that happen? In the past year, there were a number of appropriations on that side of the budget that were for capital expenditures that were not reoccurring, so some of those came in as a decrease. The municipal tax rate, for those individuals in the audience who are especially interested in the rate, is a 0.012 or 1.2 cents per hundred of assessed value increase. In addition to that, the Township Council discussed the open space tax. Presently, the township has an open space tax that is 0.6 cents or 0.006 per hundred of assessed value. The discussion included raising that to a full cent per hundred of assessed value. So when the staff and I were charged with the budget, we've all heard of a 2% cap. We live in a 2% cap world. So the council, in a conservative approach, said, listen, we recognize there's regular operations, a lot of things I'm going to get into here, but we'd like to see the open space money raised and greater so that we can use that as seed money towards our preservation projects, our open space projects, etc. Because the return on investment is typically 3 to 1 when you spend an open space dollar, if not greater. So they said to the staff and I, your job is to get the budget to a point where the greater open space tax plus the increase in the municipal tax levy is less than 2%. So if you add those two things together, our overall increase on the municipal tax side is 1.99%. 0.01 less. Changes by categories. Salaries and wages up approximately 1.04%. Other expenses, which include everything else, health insurance, paper clips, vehicles, etc. on the current fund side. Health insurance, I think everybody these days recognizes that health insurance is one of the principal drivers of costs, especially when dealing with personnel. Health insurance is up 14%, which is over $200,000. Pensions.
Number $1.7 million a year is what it costs us for health insurance.
That is the township's portion. The employees have a matching portion as well. Pensions, additionally, pensions are up approximately 10%. Debt service is actually down, as many people may be aware, but if you're not aware, the township's general capital program is a cash-based program. So my predecessor in the council and the councils before this council identified that paying cash for capital improvements was more important than borrowing money and paying interest. So the cash-based program does save some money there. And there were some deferred charges that have fallen off the books, or things that had to be funded from prior years. Revenues. Our tax collection rate is in excess of 99.5%, which means we get 99.5% of the taxes up front and don't have to rely upon the tax sale to collect them later. That remains strong. We have a settlement agreement based upon litigation for a tax appeal that includes a decrease in taxable value moving forward. So people who were forward-thinking established a reserve so that we would have a reserve to fund that moving forward. So we have a savings account that we use to offset the loss of revenue from that tax appeal settlement. In the 2018 budget, there were grants that have not been repeated, and our miscellaneous revenues anticipated are exceeding what they were in the prior year. Now, in simple terms, what does that mean? Instead of anticipating $100 when you think you're going to get $100, maybe we anticipate 90. So we approach it from a conservative situation so we don't end up with a revenue deficit. There are other levels of government that approach this differently. I'm proud of this level of government for doing it the way we do. Fund balance. Any accounting majors will think of this as owner equity. Fund balance, obviously what's remaining in the fund after the fiscal year. Fund balance is also used as a revenue, so you take money from your savings account to use it as a revenue moving forward. The strategy in municipal government is never to use more than you can regenerate. Otherwise, you end up burning the candle at both ends and your fingers get pretty hot. So the bottom line is the township's fund balance at 12/31/2018 was $2.7 million. We're using that 1.5 of that to support this budget, leaving 1.2 and change available. You can see the historical use of fund balance. The presence of $279,765 in 2010 is not an indictment of budgeting processes. That was coming right out of the heart of the economic recession, and we were using every penny we could to save every job and continue to deliver services, not just in the township of Pequannock, but throughout the state of New Jersey. Capital improvements. Our general capital improvements include $1.2 million of projects. Again, it's a fully funded pay-as-you-go program that doesn't involve the borrowing and paying of debt service or interest costs on top of that. Some highlights for 2019, in a little excess of $300,000 for road resurfacing. We plan for the need to replace fire trucks. Fire trucks don't instantly become 25 years old, as someone is apt to say. So you know that's going to happen. You save up for them over time to be forward-thinking. We have a large tree truck. We do a lot of our own in-house arborist work in town. We have an arborist on staff, so that will happen this year, and drainage improvements throughout the region to deal with, obviously, our groundwater and other issues. In addition to the current fund, or my checkbook at home as I like to think of it, we have a number of utilities in the township of Pequannock, 4 specifically. The water utility. Water utility has an overall increase of just shy of $250,000 or 10%. Why? As mentioned earlier, there's been significant capital improvement, and we need to make debt service payments. There was an ordinance that was adopted increasing the water rate so revenues meet expenses, so the water utility is balanced. The sewer utility. Sewer utility has an overall budget increase of $72,900 or 1.59%. We have an increase in costs associated with Two Bridges Sewerage Authority, which, in case anyone didn't know, when you flush, that's where it goes. Appropriations remain flat. We've got some revenue constraints. The sewer utility is something that's going to receive significant study moving forward. We've had a significant amount of projects and a lot of infrastructure improvements, so we're going to have to review the rates for the sewer utility moving forward. Solid waste utility. Overall, the solid waste utility is up $105,774 or 5.9%. Primarily, that's due to the acquisition of a vehicle, which is associated with the leaf collection process. Also, we have a recycling tonnage grant that used to be used as a revenue source within that utility. It's being moved into the grant fund as opposed to the utility. Recreation utility, overall budget's up approximately 4.7% or $24,000. There have been a number of appropriations that have been reclassified between the current fund and the recreation utility. We're also increasing the debt service payments to pay down outstanding obligations from prior years, and we used a little bit more fund balance to help offset those costs. But again, like the other 3 utilities, that utility is in balance. Budget process, as I mentioned, begins in September. It involves staff, supervisors, division heads, department heads, obviously charged by municipal code and statute. It's my responsibility to deliver a responsible budget to the Township Council. So I appreciate the input of all the staff that participated. I appreciate the comments from our volunteers. Our boards and committees have provided input. I thank the council for all of their efforts in the meetings moving forward. And ultimately, I just want to say thank you very much. The township does have a new chief financial officer who did yeoman's work on this budget in support of preparing everything for the council's consideration.
Did you practice that before you did that?
No. I'm on a roll this evening, Councilman.
All right. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2019-78, approving introduction of the 2019 municipal budget. Ms. Marsh.
The resolution reads as follows: Be it resolved that the following statements of revenues and appropriations shall constitute the municipal budget for the year 2019. Be it further resolved that said budget be published in the Suburban Trends in the issue of April 7th, 2019. The governing body of the Township of Pequannock does hereby approve the following as the budget for the year 2019.
Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-78, approving introduction of the 2019 municipal budget?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Florence Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Hurd?
Yes.
Mr. Phelan?
Yes.
Mrs. Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Cole?
Yes. There are no public hearings scheduled for this.
May I just, for the record, a notice is hereby given that the budget and the tax resolution was approved by the governing body of the Township of Pequannock, County of Morris, on March 26, 2019. A hearing on the budget and tax resolution will be held at the Municipal Building on April 23, 2019, at 7:00 p.m., at which time and place objections to said budget and tax resolutions for the year 2019 may be presented by taxpayers or other interested persons. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. There are no public hearings scheduled for this evening. Next on the agenda is items for introduction, ordinances for introduction, and there are no ordinances for introduction.
Can I interrupt you there?
What about the manager?
Yeah,
Did you do the manager's report?
we missed the manager's report.
I believe there's been a...
Or unless he covered it all.
No,
Nope, I think I made a typo. Sorry about that.
Oh, the manager has more to say?
Well, that may have been it. I've said enough already, so let's move on to other items, please. I'll be brief, as brief as possible. A couple items not covered already this evening. The township staff previously had the opportunity to discuss the preliminary flood information rate maps with FEMA. We had discussed the fact that we wanted to meet with them and requested them to meet with us. They put us off. Ultimately, they did, even though we did file for the scientific resolution panel to be convened to judge our case. We sat down with FEMA. I'll choose my words carefully. It was one of the more frustrating meetings I've ever experienced in my professional career. Although we did include our expert, and I think we put a really, really valid case forward for the scientific and technical errors that the consultants for FEMA had in their analyses. FEMA basically said, that's why we have a scientific resolution panel process. You go deal with them. So they weren't very receptive to our arguments. They did listen, but we're not going to take any opportunity as a gimme. We're going to give everything our best shot possible, and unfortunately it fell on deaf ears. Also, with respect to solid waste containers, previously there had been conversation about the township's carry-in, carry-out process. A poll was undertaken, decision was made, and council gave direction on deploying some solid waste and recycling containers to some parks where it made sense. Staff reviewed this, and I'm just reporting back to the council that within Greenview Park, 5 solid waste / recycling dual containers will be deployed around the pavilion where people congregate and generate rubbish and recyclables, and then at Woodland Lake, 2 55-gallon drums with appropriate lids will be deployed by the docks. Again, everything will be, it's a dynamic process, so we'll continue to evaluate and continue to see how things work, but I do believe the carry-in, carry-out philosophy is working in some parks, but it may not make sense everywhere. And then one other quick item that is not included in the written report, I just want to report to the Township Council and everyone that tomorrow we are having a tabletop exercise sponsored by FEMA. We're including emergency services personnel to do a rehearsal of a response to a number of scenarios pertaining to a hurricane. So as it's been a little while since, knock on wood, I'll just leave it at that. We are going to convene the team. It is an exercise that is in coordination with FEMA. It'll be multimedia oriented, and we'll be running through a 5-hour exercise with our emergency management staff, as well as Chilton Memorial Hospital and other representatives from the community. Thank you.
Adam, real quick, I just wanted for you to clarify one thing for everyone. So when you sat down with FEMA about the maps, even though they didn't want to hear it, there is still, even though they felt like, there's nothing to do at this table, there's now that next level through the technical
correct.
Team, whatever technical.
My interpretation, and I'll say this even on the public record, my interpretation of FEMA's approach to this has been to get through it as quickly as possible with less attention to detail and more attention to getting across the goal line. Their responses were consistent with, we believe we're right. That's why we have this other process. The Scientific Resolution Panel is a nonprofit body that's convened through volunteers, and the township will bring our application before a 5-member panel that is, they're scientists that belong to this nonprofit that we present our case to, and they will rule on it and give the recommendation back to FEMA how to proceed.
It's my understanding that we pick 3, they pick 2?
That's my understanding as well.
And they give a recommendation. Does FEMA have to follow their recommendation?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Do we know what they've done in the past?
I'm familiar with one town that was successful before the scientific resolution panel, and FEMA accepted the record.
Oh, good. Okay. All right.
I only have one town where I have direct knowledge, and that's the case.
All right. Thank you for clarifying.
And Adam, you said there's going to be 5 in Greenview Park near the pavilion?
Correct.
Is there any activity still near the original playground that maybe one of the 5 should go near that? The playground closest to West Parkway?
I can circle back and check. And again, we talked about it a lot, looked at maps and things, but I'll review it with staff.
That's pretty busy. It was pretty busy last weekend. There was a lot of people there. That might not be a bad idea. Just put it on there.
All right, as I said previously, there are no public hearings scheduled. Thank you, Mr. Brewer, for that report.
Thank you, Mr.
There are no public,
I will be quiet now.
There are no public hearings scheduled for this evening. There are no ordinances scheduled for introduction at this time. So next on the agenda is resolutions for approval. Ms. Marsh.
For the council's consideration, beginning with Resolution R 2019-79, approving the designated special event permit for the Pequannock Street Festival. 2019-80, appointing individuals to serve on the Open Space Advisory Committee. 2019-81, authorizing release of designated escrow deposits. 82, authorizing tax office refunds, overpayments, or cancellations. R 2019-83, authorizing the acceptance of a hold harmless agreement from Adriana and Christopher Anello. That's for Block 202, Lot 4, otherwise known as 22 Foothills Drive. R 2019-84, adopting an extended temporary budget for 2019. 2019-85, authorizing submission of a grant to the Morris County Historic Preservation Trust Fund Program and approving matching funds in the amount of $86,208 for construction of Phase 2 of the Martin Berry House rehabilitation. 2019-86, authorizing submission of an application to the Morris County Historic Preservation Trust Fund Program and approving matching funds in the amount of $4,640 for construction documents for Phase 3 of the Martin Berry House rehabilitation. R 2019-87, authorizing the execution of an interlocal service agreement between the Township of Pequannock and the Board of Education of Pequannock Township for landscape and field maintenance management services. And 2019-88, approving payment of the itemized claims as set forth on the March 21st, 2019 bill list and the March 21st, 2019, 2015, and 2016 FEMA elevation escrow lists.
Are there any comments on the resolutions from council?
I guess I just have one real quick one on Resolution 2019-83. I'm assuming that, they're talking about putting a fence that will not have any adverse effect on a drainage easement. So it really doesn't matter what kind of fence it is. No fence will have an adverse effect, whether it's a chain link fence or a what am I thinking of? Like the vinyl fences where they almost are more like a barrier. It wouldn't have any effect.
Correct. And for the benefit of anyone watching, there's a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement with a property owner who's seeking to put a fence up on his and her own property, but on that property, the township has an easement for infrastructure. So the primary purpose of the hold harmless agreement is that if the individual constructs this on the property that includes the municipality's easement, and for some reason we need to access it, it acknowledges that we're not responsible for replacing the fence. The person is in essence doing this at his and her own risk.
All right, so that's really all that's about. It has nothing to do with water or anything like
correct.
that. Okay.
Any other comments?
Nope.
Is there a motion to adopt these resolutions?
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution R 2019-79 through R 2019-88.
I'll second it. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Florence Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Hurd?
Yes.
Mr. Phelan?
Yes.
Mrs. Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Cole?
Yes. Next on the agenda is items for discussion, and there are no items for discussion this evening. Next on the agenda is reports and notices. Are there any comments or questions from council on the reports and notices that we received?
No.
All right, next on the agenda is reports and announcements, or next on the agenda is council reports and announcements. Councilwoman Florence Lynch.
A couple of comments. I know most of us did the Grains of Hope this weekend. I understand the community packed 175,000 meals, over 175,000 meals, which was great. And I'm sorry if I took that away from your report, Mayor, but it was a great experience. 175,404 meals were packed. So, what a great event that is every year. I know there's a tour this Saturday at the Two Bridges Sewer Authority. I think some of the council members are going, and some people from the Environmental Commission, and maybe some of the other committees as well. So we're meeting here at Town Hall at 9:30. If any of you wanted to go to that, just call Tom Newman, reach out to him.
And the public is welcome to go too.
Yeah, I guess they are, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so if anyone's interested in taking a tour of the Two Bridges Sewer Authority, let Tom Newman from the Environmental Commission know.
Where it goes when you flush.
Huh?
Where it goes when you flush.
Yeah, exactly. I did the tour years ago. It was interesting, so I figured I'd take a tour.
They built all kinds of new stuff.
Yeah, I haven't been there in probably over 8 years, 9 years.
Process.
Let's see, Economic Development. The Economic Development Committee meets tomorrow night here in this room at 7:30. What else? Some of you might not know, Jennifer McCullough, our town flood advocate, is hosting a flood workshop for realtors and bankers that do business in the area. So that announcement just went out, and it's just to kind of get everybody that's doing business in town, plus residents can come too, anyone can come, but it's just, so people that are talking with residents, they want to, you want to be able to understand the flood risk of certain homes. You want to be able to read the flood maps. It's good for residents as well if you don't have a lot of information and you want information. Where to find the flood maps, how to read them. It'll go over, what else? Changes in the National Flood Insurance Program. It'll talk about flood mitigation techniques that homeowners can do on their own homes. It'll talk about elevation certificates, the benefits of getting an elevation certificate. So that workshop is going to be April, I don't have the date in front of me. She just sent it out today. Oh no, and I don't know the date. That date is, I believe it's April 11th, I believe is the date on that. I'll double check that and report
Do you know
it
the
next
location,
time.
Councilwoman?
Yeah, yes, it's here in this room. It's in this room, but I don't think I have the date right because it's a Tuesday. It is, I'll send it around. It's, what'd you say, it can't be?
Can't be the 9th, because that's when we're meeting.
I believe it's during the day.
Oh, it is during the day.
Yeah, it's during the day. I believe it's April 9th.
Okay.
I'll send it around to everybody. What else? That's really all I have right now for this month.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Councilman Hurd.
I am off my meeting schedule right this minute, so I have nothing other than, I have to say, running through the village, looking really good with all the houses that we're elevating. Good job. A lot of houses are getting up. I have to say the contractors seem like they're doing pretty good, meaning there's not a lot of chaos down there, and there's not a lot of stuff on the new roads that we just paved and redid over the last couple of years. So
Those are being done privately, though, correct? They're not part of the grant.
No, there are a number that are part of it.
There are quite a few that are, yes.
And other than that, congratulations on the Grains of Hope, and that's all I have.
All right, Councilman Phelan.
I don't really have anything other than Company 2 met last Thursday and discussed the installation dinner, the cost of the installation dinner, and what they may do to try to help defer the cost of the installation dinner. But they're definitely doing the installation dinner with Company 1 next year, so that's a good thing. And that's it.
All right, Councilwoman Russell.
Library met. Everything's going well. They just got a new fish tank in. If you haven't seen it, it's really nice. they're having the problem again. They had it a number of years ago where the children are coming in from PV. At one count, they counted about 100 kids came over, and, you know, they're not just sitting quietly. So they wrote a letter, and the middle school handed it out. Hopefully that helps, but, you know, if your kids go to the library, just tell them they should really kind of keep it a little quieter, because I did stop in there, and they do get rowdy, and some of them actually have their feet up, and it's just not the right place. The Environmental Commission met, and April 27th, they're giving out the free trees, so if anybody needs to plant any trees, it'll be here in the parking lot. April 13th is a rain barrel, and that'll be at Greenview Park.
Let me just interrupt you for a second. I've been asked to pick up those rain barrels.
Yes, you're going to do that, right?
They're not so easy to pick up. We can't get a tractor trailer into the location.
They have a lot this year. Last year they didn't have a lot. This year they have a lot.
Can't get a tractor trailer into the location. We were just told today.
Oh, so what's going to happen?
I guess you guys are going to have to hire somebody.
Ooh.
We're trying to work out the details.
You just have to get a smaller truck. You can't have a tractor trailer.
Don't you have anything smaller?
We have
Why do you
smaller
gotta do everything
trucks, but
so
they're not
big,
in the
Rich?
Philadelphia area.
The whole of the rain barrels in Philly?
I'm sure they can do it. Yeah.
It's not so easy.
It's like from a soda plant, right? It's a Coca-Cola?
Right, and we have to make an appointment to go in there, and our guys are on 10-hour
And then you were going to have them delivered, and then they have to be cleaned out because they'll have like syrup.
We're still working on it, but there's some problems with it.
Okay, so April 13th may be the rain barrel.
Yes.
Maybe not. April 6th is the mayor's cleanup. And that's all I got.
All right, thank you. Barron Housing meets tomorrow night, and as Councilwoman Russell said, the Mayor's River cleanup is scheduled for...
Did you skip one? Nope, sorry.
April 6th.
I apologize.
He was right.
No, stuff from the side, man.
The Mayor's River cleanup is scheduled for April 6th. I think Mr. Brewer's going to be there.
Clean it up after that one.
Real quick, Mayor, before you go on, I did confirm I had the date wrong on the flood advocate, the workshop that Jennifer's doing. It's actually April 23rd, which is a Tuesday, but it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And it's here. Okay. And the only other thing is, since you were talking about things coming up, we also have put on your calendar, even though it's a little far out, Shred Day, Saturday, May 18th at 1 o'clock. That's it. Thank you.
And the only other thing that I really wanted to say was congratulations to Grains of Hope. It was a tremendous event, a great community event, not only for Pequannock, but surrounding communities. There was people there.
It was amazing how many people came. Montville Center,
Lincoln Park,
Hope Peak,
Riverdale, Chilton had a huge presence there. I think there was roughly 165 volunteers from Chilton there. There was over 1,000 volunteers that packaged those meals. So it was a great community event. All right, next on the agenda is public comment. If anyone wishes to address the council, please wait to be recognized. Come to the microphone. I can already see Rocco's hand is up. And provide your name and address for the record. Rocco.
Rocco Solution, 153 Jacksonville Road. I have a couple questions. First of all, how much is the increase on the budget that you guys proposed?
1.99%?
1.99?
1.26 on the municipal tax levy, and the corresponding increase for the open space taxes from 0.6 cents per hundred to 1 cent per hundred.
And the total amount is what? 1.99, is that what you said?
If you add those two together, it's the equivalent of 1.99, but it's two separate levies being merged together for the purpose.
So on the average house, Rocco, that's assessed for $375,890, it's $51.87 for the year, or $4.32 a month. So I don't know many houses that are
$27, 27 cents a day. I know the whole story. I know the way you guys work, and
hard.
I have another one. This was just an introduction on the budget, correct?
Correct.
Just want to verify that. On the Foothill Park, the water's not going anyplace over there. Did anybody go near there, at least to try to investigate and see what the heck is going on?
They've been there weekly.
You should find out when it rains. Maybe somebody should go over there with a flashlight and find out where the main water is coming through. You guys never had this kind of problem until somebody did something next to the property over there. And I don't know much about building or anything like that, but I do know that the only way you could get that much water to go someplace, all of a sudden, something drastic had to happen. We had many, many times where we had more rain than what we had now, and then never overflowed it like this year. Now, this is going on a couple months or so. Something drastically happened.
Rocco, I'm just going to make one comment. The back of my yard has been a swamp since July. I have not been able to mow the lower part of my backyard because the groundwater is so high.
Okay. And the way it's going right now, even though maybe 10 days in rain and whatnot, that water's not going anyplace.
It hasn't been anywhere in my backyard.
No, come on. You do have some absorption, okay? I get a little water. I get a little water in my backyard in there, but I gotta tell you, it dries up. 3, 4, 5 days over there, it dries up.
Stop over my house, I'll show you.
Okay. When was the last time that you guys, any one of you, seen Foothills, that little pond they have over there that overflowed, except this year? Anybody name me one more time? And we have plenty of rain, a lot of years.
I haven't seen my backyard in my house for 5 years the way it is this year or last year. It's bad, Rocco.
What you're saying is that we have more water this year than we ever had before. Is that what you just said?
Yes.
Over time.
Because, and although this issue has been reported on many occasions from the dais, the challenge is the reoccurring 1-inch, 2-inch rainstorm is different than the massive rainstorm. So the challenge with the groundwater has been one that's never been experienced before in the area. Additionally, if you look at the historic aerials of Foothills Park, because this has been given extensive attention and is being monitored closely, the entire area was once covered in water. So there are greater issues and we are watching them, but I appreciate your concerns.
I'm going to make a prediction that if someone doesn't find where their water's coming through over there, you're going to have Foothill Park flooded all year. Look into it, please.
I wouldn't debate that. I believe it's going to be flooded all of 2019.
And it's not because it's over raining and whatnot inside there. There used to be about 3 or 4 feet below the whole way around now. Now it's overflowing to a point where it may be about 6, 8 feet higher than anything else. Something is drastically wrong.
We're continuing to monitor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rocco.
Nick?
Nick DeStefano, 28 Greenwood Ave. The first thing I want to ask you, Dave, I know recently you met with several of the mayors and met with some of the other people. Did you get any good information from that meeting that you went to recently, Mikey Sherrill?
Yeah, Mikey Sherrill. She took a lot of notes.
Did you get any kind of good info from any of the other mayors, or it was just basic stuff?
No, I mean,
we've heard a million times.
The biggest complaint that a lot of the mayors had were the red tape that you have to go through with DEP to do the de-snagging. The one guy that was there, I don't remember who he was, but when he said when he was a kid he used to be able to walk across the river and it would just be above his ankles, or it would be chest. When he was a kid it was chest high. Now he says it just covers my ankles. He says that's how much stuff has been.
The sediment.
Yeah, the sediment. So, but she took a lot of notes. I hope she can help clear up some of that. One guy did make a recommendation. Why do we need to go through DEP? Why can't we privatize that? Which she really was interested in. So. We'll see what happens.
And back to the village, yes, several of those homes are part of the elevation project. Some are actually almost done. Some are going to be starting soon. So what you're seeing over there is really a great thing for the town, because also what I see in the future is it's also going to motivate other people for, a nominal cost for them to actually take out whatever they have to do to elevate their home, so they save on the flood insurance and also raise their property values. So that was part of the whole plan from the very beginning, is just to increase the values of those homes and make everybody safe. The last thing I wanted to mention is we were having our committee meeting with the Pequannock Democrats next Wednesday at April 3rd. What's that?
Are you inviting us?
I'm inviting you right now, and we're having. It was suggested that we have somebody come and speak, so we got somebody from one of the solar panel companies to come and just do a short presentation, because this is the last year that we're going to have the 30% tax incentive. So,
are you sure about that?
Yeah, this is the last year. Next year it goes to 20%. So this is the last year that you're going to get the 30%.
What's the date on that, Nick?
April 3rd, 7:30. So he's going to go over all that, and it really, especially people that are being affected by the salt tax, anybody that's looking for that extra benefit, because you're capped at that 10,000, the fact that you'll be able to, possibly, have that extra tax incentive write-off. So, and you'll get a system out of it.
If I have time, I would love to go to the meeting and tell you what it's like to own solar panels since they're on my house, because they'll sell you a whole bunch of interesting stuff.
Yeah, well, I have them too, and for me it's been a home run. It's changed a lot over the years, and it depends on which program you go with and who you're working with. There's a lot of different things involved.
I own mine. You're talking about leasing. I own mine.
No, I own mine also. So
there's only one program when you own it. That's
right. But what I'm saying is, over the years, it has changed in different ways. So I just think that this is the last year that it's a really good deal, especially for people that are looking for other ways to offset their taxes. So I think it's worthwhile for everybody to give it a listen.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Yes.
Mike Vicosa, 22 Birch. I'm not an expert, but as far as the FEMA maps, it seems to me that FEMA just kind of took a whole bunch of homes to get more money because they're kind of bankrupt or need the money for other projects. And they put the burden on, I guess, the towns. So as far as the scientific panel, obviously the towns have to pay money for that.
The township is responsible for paying our expert. We don't have to pay for the people to hear the testimony. It's not like an arbitrator where we're responsible for half the cost of those individuals. They're not a cost to us.
We pay for the expert.
We pay for our expert to provide testimony.
Is there a way to recoup that from the federal government? No.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. In reference to the dog park, in the presentation they said there were 2 out of 3 pumps working. The one pump that's not working, is that by the dog park?
Yes, it is.
Is there any way maybe a quick test can be done if they turn on that pump? Will the water recede more quickly than, say you have a week where it recedes 1 inch, if we turn the pumps on for a week with the same conditions that were in the prior week, will it go down even?
The problem is we're pumping the water into our system.
Our corrosive...
Well, and it's a good question, and based upon the discussion with the engineers, of which I am not one, the groundwater is creating hydrostatic pressure. It's believed to be creating hydrostatic pressure and adding to that. The aquifer is several hundred feet down, so is there a relationship? There may be, but it's not direct. It's not like sticking a straw into a Slurpee and going from the bottom and having that reduce the impact. It's further away than that. Okay. But it's something we have explored.
Yeah, that's it.
Any other public comments? No? Next on the agenda is minutes for approval, March 26, 2019, budget workshop, and March 26, 2019, regular meeting. Are there any comments on these minutes?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next on the agenda are items for closed session, and I believe we do have items for closed session.
We do. We have a contract negotiation item, and it is possible that public action will be taken following our executive session.
Is there a motion to go into closed?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.